Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August 2019 Radnor Township School District Curriculum Committee meeting. And we have some new members on our committee today, so I'd like to take an opportunity for everyone to introduce themselves. I'm Lydia Solomon, Chair of the Curriculum Committee. Let's go this way around.
Sure, I'm Andrew Babson, Vice Chair.
Sarah Dunn, Committee Member.
Ken Batchelor, Superintendent.
Thank you. Maureen McQuiggan. I'm the Interim Director of Elementary Education.
Dan Bechtel, Director of Secondary Ed.
We're skipping to you, Jesse.
Jesse Rising Jr.
And he will be our new student rep this year, so welcome, Jesse.
Student representative.
Welcome.
And Andrea McMenamin, teacher representative.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for letting me put you on the spot, and welcome. Okay, are there any administrative remarks? Administrators?
Yes, today we have a full agenda, including an overnight trip to Spain and Italy that we're seeking approval for that will take place over spring break. We're looking to present the bus contract for Camp Canadensis. We also have informational items on the flexible instructional days, student handbooks, an update on the school start time initiative, as well as an update on the technology initiative.
All right, thank you very much. We've got a packed agenda as usual. So shall we dive right in? That brings us to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Hello, Roberta.
Welcome back to school. I know for a lot of you, you have not left. I was just listening to some of the agenda items, and I am pleased to see that you're looking at the school start time and the importance, I hope, of stressing healthy sleep throughout the program from K through 12, and also noting one of the things that we had talked about at some point in time is looking specifically at the elementary day, and as, for example, in looking at things like recess and lunch breaks and things like that, because I think it's important that we start looking at school wellness from a K-12 perspective, okay? Thank you so much, and I appreciate all the hard work you've been doing, and know that the school will be off to a great start with all the student handbooks ready to go. Now we just have to read them, right? Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of reading, right? Okay, that brings us to, I believe, the board action items. So these are items that are going through committee that will then appear on the business agenda for the August meeting next week. Okay, we'll get to those in a minute. We need to do the approval of our minutes for the June meeting. Board?
Yeah, they're fine.
Ready? Okay, so the meeting minutes are fine as written. Okay, now we get to move to the action items for the August business meeting.
All right, the first action item is a trip for Radnor High School students to Italy and Spain that takes place over spring break this year. That was included in your packet, and we also have the Camp Canadensis transportation contract. That's something that we, it's not typically here. We wanted to bring it here because of the timeline, so that way we could get that approved so that Camp Canadensis planning can move forward.
No proposed clubs, no other
Not
items?
at this time.
Okay.
Can I add a question about the buses for Camp Canadensis?
Yeah, sure.
Just in light of the fact that last year we had to switch the Sandy Hill, and I know we incurred a fee, which is understandable when you cancel. There's a kind of a reference in here to the back of the contract. Has somebody looked at it to make sure that if for some reason we can't send the kids because the police tell us it's not safe, or there's some reason we have to cancel Camp Canadensis, is there any kind of refund on we can use the money towards a later trip?
Right, so the last year when we had to change the date, we were able to reschedule the buses. The only charge was incurred came from the camp itself.
Okay, This one, though, it says there's a cancellation charge.
Yeah, but yes, it does. And so did the one last year did too.
Okay, so we're just hoping that we could renegotiate it
Well,
as long as we reschedule.
They didn't consider it a cancellation. They considered it a rescheduling.
Perfect, okay, thanks.
Oh, that's interesting. So we get into that kind of loophole or whatever, not a loophole, but classification, all right. Any comments about?
Sure. Just a couple of comments. So, about the spring break trip. So looking into this and reflecting on it actually sparked some really interesting conversations that I had with board leadership. And, you know, this a takeaway. I mean, first of all, it's a great opportunity for kids to learn by traveling. It's a really excellent learning opportunity. But just considering, what it prompted me to consider was the inclusiveness of our learning opportunities, and just it gave me a chance to reflect on that. And are there ways that we can both present learning opportunities to kids, but also keep in mind that the cost might be prohibitive for some families? And so are there ways that we can present these opportunities, let's say, you know, schedule it such that families can plan, right? So if a kid wants to go, maybe they can plan for that months in advance. There can at least be some kind of recognition somewhere along the line that this could be an issue, and that we could just move the needle a little bit toward inclusiveness. So that it prompted that thought. Also prompted another thought that's come up in policy about student trips, and you know, are we aligning the trip with our curricular goals? Can we show a clear benefit of the trip for their learning? I'm sure we can, but, you know, do we have a process for doing that? So I just thought I'd share those two thoughts of, you know, that this, you know, looking at this trip and the cost sort of occasioned, you know, those two ideas. So I thought I'd share that. But it sounds like a great opportunity. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you, Andrew. Andrew did talk to me about the inclusive issue of the trip. And, you know, it made me think, I didn't know if it had ever been the case. There's many things at the high school that you have to pay extra for, like all the club sports. I was thinking, like, if you want to do crew or ice hockey, or even if you want to go on Model UN or Model Congress, like, they're extracurriculars, you pay for them. And this, to me, fell under that because it was over the Easter break. But I was intrigued by the idea of what we would do if we had someone come to the administration and say, you know, hey, they're going next year, you know, let's give them a long lead time, and they really want to go and they need some help fundraising for it. I wasn't sure of the answer, like what we would do or say or how we might coach them.
So one of the things that we do before we bring a trip like this to the board is we garner interest. So in the spring, there was a meeting where they went and reached out to the students and garnered interest. And there was about a little more than a dozen students that were interested in going on the trip. At that time, they presented information about ways that the students could raise funds for it. So I did have a chance to speak to one of the trip sponsors yesterday. So Melissa Civitella is one of the teachers that is planning to support this trip. She said that there are financial aid scholarships that are put on by the company that help to defray a small portion of the cost, but there's also a website that each individual student can go and set up if they're planning to go on this, and they could send out the link to family, friends, neighbors, and that they can contribute directly to the students' cost of the trip. So that's those two things were presented when they garnered interest in the spring. Provided the board approves this at this month's meeting, they're going to have a follow-up parent meeting in September, and they will represent both of those items.
That's great. And, you know, I think that in that gauging interest process, as long as that is communicated very clearly to the students, that number one, this is an opportunity for learning. Obviously, you're going to have fun, but it's an opportunity for learning, and it's part of the Radnor mission, right? And if it's framed in such a way that, if you really want to go and you really want to avail yourselves of this learning opportunity, then we're going to support you in whatever way we can. Now, of course, the wording of that and, you know, being realistic about our limitations to do that, obviously that plays into it. But it does, I think that's really positive that the company has built that into their offer.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrew, for bringing that up, because I think, and you made a great point, it's a mission of a public school to try to reach everybody. So I guess I just want to be sure when we look at these things too, that we don't not offer opportunities to the 12 kids that want to go. You know, I don't want something to hold us back, like, oh, well, you know, everybody in the high school can't go, so therefore we shouldn't do it. So I think we walk a fine line there, you know, like offering as much as we can. But I love the idea, and I did not know that they had those other things in place, so I feel a lot better about that too. So, good point, Andrew. All
I think it's just a good conversation for us to continue to have. I mean, to make sure as we look at different programs and opportunities, you know, I think as a community, as a district, we work very hard to be inclusive and to try to understand what are our needs of our students. But it's something that we should continue to have those conversations, because there's, you know, there are financial hardships in our community, and we do have avenues and opportunities to support the kids, but to make sure that we're continuing to have this conversation, that we are addressing that in all manners and different activities we do. So I think it's a good conversation.
Okay, any other thoughts? You don't have to. All right, let's see. I'm in favor of putting those items through to the full board. Okay, so we have unanimous support for those items for the business agenda. And that brings us to
Flexible instruction.
yes, Dr. McQuiggan.
So if you've been watching the news, you've heard that they have announced that there are no more snow makeup days at any school district ever. A little bit more to the story that we're going to talk about tonight. So Act 64 does provide us with an opportunity to apply for flexible instruction days. We did spend some time reviewing the application process and considering what type of an impact it would have on Radnor. I gave you just a little bit of a snippet. I cut and pasted the assurances that we have to provide as part of our plan. I'm sure you've read in the paper too that some of our area school districts have already opted out. After reviewing the option to offer students the opportunity to do their schoolwork at home on the snow days and the parameters involved with that, our recommendation at this point is not to pursue an application. A couple of the factors that led to that decision, number one, we have 4 built-in snow days this year, which it's a new thing for us to have that many days built in, but that puts a nice comfort bubble in the calendar for us. The second one, it's some of the assurances there, as you'll see, that we have to guarantee free and appropriate public education and all those types of things that we do for our special education students, even if they're going to be learning at home. And in reviewing some of that with Mrs. Lesage, we thought that that would be somewhat challenging for many of our students. The other piece is we have to meet all the guidelines around establishing nursing services for students on those days, on top of the regular considerations: who has access to technology, who doesn't have access to technology, those types of things. So we feel that the safeguards that we have in our calendar right now, with our 4 makeup days and the processes that we've used in the past, when we get to the spring of the year, we look at our calendar and what we owe and what we don't owe and make a decision as to whether or not we need to add days or teacher days or student days, and we feel that that will work for us this year. It'll also give us an opportunity to look at how it's worked in other districts, if they've found simplified ways to meet these assurances outside of the school day, and we can learn from successes that school districts who decide to give it a shot have. But so far, we haven't seen anyone jumping at the chance.
Okay, maybe I missed it. So the other districts in Delaware County are not
We haven't
opting-
heard as much
Oh,
from
no.
the other districts in Delaware County, but just in the newspaper, you've seen a few, like in the Boyertown area and things like that, pretty quickly. The other thing, typical with some of these things that come down. You know, the application came out, I believe it was 10 days ago, and it's due September 1st. And you need, 10 lesson plans for each grade level and each content area. I mean, it's pretty involved.
Yeah, and every district's already presumably made their calendar. So,
Yeah, I mean, reading the summary, and obviously it kind of ties to your recommendation, but I circled most of the disadvantages or challenges you just flagged. I circled those. I was like, what? How will we do this? This sounds really costly. This sounds inadvisable. I mean, how are you going to provide nursing services on a day we say you shouldn't be out on the roads?
Well, and it's, there could be some simple, I'm sure with some brainstorming and creativity, and we have a lot of smart people here.
Teledoc.
We could figure things out, but in a matter of 2 weeks in a year that we probably aren't going to need them anyway, and if we do, we might need a day here, a day there. It's probably, I wouldn't assume we would get the return on our investment. Especially this time of year to kind of drop everything and bring groups of teachers together to make exemplar lessons and those types of things.
I think you're wise to say, especially given the time crunch, because that was also one of the things I circled and exclamation marked. But yeah, I think you're very smart to see how other people do it, if anybody does it. And
yeah, and there are still a lot of parents who go to work on those days,
Exactly.
and students still are in different childcare settings. And
Right.
If I'm a childcare provider and I'm caring for 15 students that are getting assignments from 7 different districts, and
are they all going to be on your Wi-Fi at once getting their homework done?
I don't know. I don't know.
they're going to be building snowmen.
Yeah, good. That's fun too. So anyway, that's an informational item for you. So, and we'll keep you posted, as we pay attention to what's happening in our area and folks that decide to participate and how those things go.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say on these days, like, it's technology-based, this program, right?
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have
It
to
doesn't
be.
have to be. And we're very fortunate here in that we have a lot of technology and most of our students have access. But, this is for school districts across Pennsylvania, so there are school districts that wouldn't have those.
It'd be like take-home assignments, because like there are like kids I know that have trouble like staying on task, like doing their homework, and so when given a snow day, I find it like highly unlikely that kids would like feel motivated to like do an entire lesson by themselves at home. So I mean, like, and who's to like say like hold them accountable for like not doing their lessons? Like, would they come in the next day and the teacher would just be like, oh, you didn't do your lesson at home on a snow day where the weather basically lets you sleep in for the day? And so it's like, I don't know, I just think it's not very feasible.
Not only some students might not be motivated,
Yeah.
You're not
Parents.
on.
not only will some students possibly not be motivated, I'm sure that there are many parents who may not feel, as a parent who would not necessarily feel motivated to, on a snow day, try to make sure all the students are engaged. I think the reality is, Dr. McQuiggan and the comments everyone's making is, it's probably a good idea to see how this plays out. The challenge will be for us, is we have the 4 built-in days. If we ever used FID days, these flexible instructional days, I would imagine we'd probably use them on day 5 or 6. There's a tipping point. There's a point where, they don't want to hear my voice anymore for a snow day, and then we might all appreciate having that flexible instructional day. So I think it's a good plan to monitor it this year and then see how we want to proceed in future years.
Yeah, but I think Jesse makes a really good point about, it's hard to assume that we can send homework or give students packets that will be as valuable to them as a day in front of their teachers.
But it's my understanding, right, we're not, so say we have the 5th snow day, we're not eligible to
If we don't apply, we
then
won't
switch
be
to
able
that,
to,
yeah.
right. We would
No, I'm
use-
okay with that, with not applying. I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
But we can still apply next year. if we want to.
Yeah.
So this is the first year that, okay.
Oh, this just came out.
Right, yeah. Okay.
This little bugger came out, what, a week ago? 2 weeks?
The details just came out for districts. I mean, it came out that it was put into, it was passed, but the details were just received by districts recently. This was piloted a few years ago, so it's not a completely new concept for the state. There was a pilot process 6 years ago or so where different districts could apply to try to have a flexible instructional day, and there were a lot of what we're seeing now, a lot of hoops that had to be jumped through in order to offer that.
All right, I think I hear that we're all in support of the let's wait and see approach to this. All right. Student handbooks.
All right, so the next item is an informational item, is the student handbooks. This is something that we do not need to move on to the full board. One of the things that we did this year was we sat down with the administrators from all three levels, and we worked to streamline with our policy solicitor at Diazio the handbooks to make sure that references to policy and policies were updated and that they had common language. After we did that, we went and updated various items in there, including calendar, employees. We had a number of changes due to school start time, which is our next item. But so we went through and did that, and they were included in your packet on Friday.
So how are these distributed again? Are these now distributed electronically
Yes.
to
So.
families? Yeah.
Yeah, so what'll end up happening is the handbooks will be available online for parents and students in all of the buildings.
All right, so we're not printing out 1,000 hard copies of any of this stuff. And do we have any idea how many people go on and look at this online?
So one of the things that we ask parents and students to do is review this each year, and one of the things that they sign off on is that they have reviewed their student's handbook for their particular school.
Okay.
Okay, so you've asked parents to sign that they've reviewed them all. Do we actually have any way to know whether people are actually clicking on the website? Okay, I mean, as a parent who's had kids in the district for years, sometimes you do I read that when they were in kindergarten, and if there were major changes, I'm sure it would be all over the Radnor reader, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it's available.
It is available, yes.
Because it is a meaty thing. I mean, just keeps getting.
I think it's,
More
even
intense.
when I reference it myself, I think it's more that people go on now and then and they look at different sections of it, so if they're interested in, you read the whole thing? There you go.
I've gotten through the high school handbook so far.
But you're a lawyer. You'd like that stuff. Any comments?
Yeah, it's true.
Do you go on the handbook and read? No, you don't have to answer that.
But I do.
No, you didn't have to answer that.
I signed the contract.
Okay. Okay.
Is this your first meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Yeah, be nice to him. He won't come back. All right, any other comments about
You're doing so.
the handbooks? Because I know in the past, there were just some editing. Nobody found anything. Good. Job.
I just want to jump in between. Dr. Kearney sent me a message that Ridley is one of the districts that's going to be applying for the flexible instruction time.
Okay.
So if you remember, they've had the K-12 iPads for many years. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so they had one-to-one devices all the way through then, K to 12?
Yeah.
Because
they've-
you would almost have to have that, I would think, to implement, like don't you think, an instruction day
Or
at
I guess
home?
you'd be doing the packets.
Yeah, but how are you going to get them packets? You wake up and there's a foot of
Yeah,
snow. How are you
that's
going
true.
you're going to drive around?
Well, it would have to be something generic, I guess, that,
You're giving it like on the first day of school
Yeah.
to be used.
keep it in a locked box in case of snow.
Yeah, the nurse with the dog sled. Yeah, perfect. All right, and that, I think, any other comments about the handbooks? That brings us to the school start time. And again, just an informational update.
So there was a significant amount of work that's been done by a host of people since we had the board vote in the spring. I included some handouts that's available. Logistical items such as planning bell schedules, ordering of buses, hiring of bus drivers, planning healthy sleep tips, looking into and investigating the Schoology, doing the assignment submissions earlier so they're not at 11:59 p.m. So prioritizing athletes in the high school schedule, and we gathered a lot of information from students. We did the Healthy Sleep Tips survey again, which would be our second year doing that. And we also did an athletic survey with students that were in grades 8, 9, 10, 11 to see their interest in participating. We do have a lot of opportunities for feedback coming up. So we realize that we've spent a significant amount of time planning, and we don't expect things to be perfect. We think that we've got a great plan, and we anticipate that the start of any school year is a hectic time of year, and that there will be new traffic patterns and people get adjusted to them, and that we are openly soliciting feedback. So we still have our sleep at RTSD.org open and available to solicit feedback from parents and students, and we're planning a parent survey. We're going to be soliciting ongoing feedback from our faculty and staff as we start the school year to get feedback on things that we need to tweak. We'll have a student government forum at the high school to provide feedback after the first 6 weeks, and we are also at each of the 5 buildings going to have parent feedback stations at parent-teacher conferences. So we do have one of the things that we realize is that there may need to be adjustments as we move through this, and so we have planned a number of opportunities to solicit that feedback so we can make adjustments.
I have just a couple questions. I think this aligns with what we talked about last year, but I just want to confirm. I remember the 2 new bus drivers and the 5 new school buses. It wasn't incrementally 5 because of this. Some of them we were ordering anyway. But that's what the board had contemplated last year.
So we are planning to trade in 3. But we ordered 5 buses. That is correct.
Okay. Just because I know I hear a lot about the Schoology assignment settings, you mentioned something. Are you actually able to lock it somehow that teachers can't post new assignments after a certain time?
What we did was we contacted Schoology about changing the predetermined end time is 11:59 p.m. So if I assign something due on Wednesday, it basically says midnight. So at this time, that's not a setting that we can change.
Okay.
But we are in a queue with about 14 other school districts right now that have requested that from Schoology. Okay. So once they get requests from multiple school districts and they look into those types of things, they do typically respond to those things. I mean, Schoology changes and improves every year. So we're hopeful.
I think that's a different issue because I think that's a good one, but I think I'm thinking of something separate. So you're saying if homework is due on Wednesday, right now it could be submitted through Schoology until 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday.
It can be submitted past that time,
but it would be on time.
Yes.
What I'm asking is actually the starting point. Is there a way to say that teachers have to announce an assignment by a certain time so that homework assignments aren't going out at 9 o'clock that are due the next day?
Right, so we already have that in place procedurally, and I don't know, at the high school, it was like, if you don't give it by the end of the end of the school day?
If you don't announce it in class, then you're not permitted to give it to students after that.
Okay, so I mean, if for parents who ask me, I can say whatever you've heard in the past. The rule is if it's not announced in class, it's not.
Right, and that's not a trigger in Schoology. That's just a procedure. that
Okay,
people are
and
supposed
for
to
kids who
follow.
aren't in class, if somebody's out sick, is there a time that the homework will get posted in Schoology to ensure that they have the time to do it for the next day
It'll
if they're coming
still
in?
be posted by the end of the class that
Okay,
day.
in Schoology.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. That's great. And clearly there was a lot of work with the bus routes. We didn't have a chance to talk about it in finance when we approved that, or facilities, I forget which one. But I just wanted to say there was obviously a lot of effort that went into getting those into reasonable timeframes and reasonable routes. And I'm sure no matter what you do, there will be people who are unhappy about it. I would just make sure that that we encourage everyone who's not going to use a bus to tell people you're not going to use the bus because it will improve efficiency for everybody. So, for example, my daughter's bus, we live a mile from the school, and it would pick her up almost 45 minutes before school starts. So she's not going to take the bus, and I promised John Hearn I will make sure he knows that. So, to the extent he can trim down bus stops, they can do that for the other kids. So, thank you.
We can put it in there.
So I just want to mention a few things basically for the people watching at home. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what's happening with the Penn property. I know through the summer, it's been down to one lane at certain times. And we've discussed this with various people, but I just want to give the update to the general community on where we stand with, or what we think that might look like with the construction going on across the street.
So the main entrance to the high school is open, and that's taking traffic currently. I know that I did speak with Mr. Brooks today, and I know that he provided an update at the Facilities Committee meeting as well. Based on the discussions that we've had with PICO as a district and with Penn Medicine, the discussions that we've had, the plan is that on our busy times that they would work with us, so we would have a window of maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes during our busy times around the high school that they would not be working. So I spoke with Mr. Brooks yesterday, and I followed up with him again today. And so that's one of the things that we had spoken about with them last year and that they confirmed this year as well. So I think that whenever you have a construction project going on, you're going to have headaches. And so we're doing the best we can, and I know that the groups that are working on this, they're doing the best they can to try to make it as manageable a situation as they can for us. But, one of the things that as we start a new school year, I'll reiterate that it's always great to get there early. So anytime that people go and they're trying to get to school and they're starting a new traffic pattern, to get there as soon as we can. So I guess that's what we've got.
Yeah, and so this might be in addition to them not working during certain crunch hours, but I thought Mr. Brooks also said that PennDOT is only going to work on the road between 9 and 2. Is that something that's been confirmed as well? I heard that, but
So
do you know?
I'm not sure of that. I know that one of the things that we are working with to help get people in the and to help traffic flow to start is we're going to have police at the entrance of the high school to start the school year to help direct traffic and then help traffic flow. Again, we believe that the first 2 weeks will be a learning curve for everybody, getting used to, there's buses on the road, there's student drivers on the road, and so one of the things we have done is we've reached out to the police, and they'll be helping at the entrance of Radnor High School to get people in and out.
Yeah, we covered all this in the Facilities Committee meeting, if you go back and watch the minutes.
Well, I just didn't know how many people in the general public,
Yeah,
were
no, I know.
looking for answers.
I just want to just jump in too, and I really appreciate all the work Mr. Bechtold and the team have done, and just want to reiterate that point that he just stated. The first 2 weeks of the start of a school year in any school district is really hectic, and it takes a couple of weeks for the traffic patterns to settle. That happens on any given year. So I just want people to be aware that, and just as a reminder that, we are changing, and with that change of start times, there's always those first 2 weeks of, there's a lot of commuters in our area who all of a sudden are going to be shocked school's in session. I'll be honest, I do it myself every year as I travel through, 2 other school districts to come here, and I go, oh, goodness, that's right, there's a bus here at this time or that time. And it takes a little bit for people and the commuters to all realize what are those patterns, and then it all adjusts again. And it's especially hard because I think August is traditionally the most quiet time as well when we look at the traffic patterns. So there is some normal, upheaval for the first 2 weeks of school to begin with. On top of that, we have especially at our high school, but also at our middle school and our elementary programs, we've got an adjustment too that's going to play into that as well.
Yep. Any other comments on traffic? Because I have then some questions about academics with regard to this. And I heard the answers, but I want this just to be out there for public record. So with losing an hour of the high school day, I had a question that did everybody, were the schedules up and running? Did everybody, get their schedule solidified? And so I just want you to say, because I heard the answer was that, yes, lots of, I guess, students had to be scheduled by hand, but that you're amazing and that everybody did get scheduled. but I just wanted to let you have an opportunity to discuss that.
So the high school team did a phenomenal job. Mrs. Kevkis, the principal, and Mr. Booterball, the assistant principal, spent a lot of time going through schedules. Schedules are set to be released for the high school and the middle school tomorrow at 3 p.m. There was the first time going through a schedule like this. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of hand scheduling that was done to make sure that we had the least amount of conflicts possible. So our guidance counselors have been working diligently to resolve conflicts for the last 2.5 weeks, and so we feel confident that we're meeting students' needs, and that this schedule that we have together this year is going to be comparable to other year schedules. So in any given year when you have 1,240 students and you've got them selecting 7 or 8 classes, you're going to have scheduling conflicts. That's just inevitable. But thanks to all the hard work of our guidance counselors and our administration at the high school, that I think that when schedules get released tomorrow at 3 o'clock, that people will be pleased with the schedules.
Can I just clarify, because I think maybe you just misspoke. We didn't actually lose an entire hour from the high school day.
No,
So
it's
we-
a half hour.
Okay, but you said we lost an hour, so I just want to make sure nobody thought we were cutting our high school day by an hour.
We're starting an hour later. Thank you for clarifying that. And I know the answer, or I've been told the answer to this, but I also want to bring this out. There is a myth, I think, that there were some students or a lot of students that had conflicts this year more than other years. And I believe the answer is that that is not the case. So I just want to put that out there to have a chance to discuss that.
I think that when you have a change, that it provides people an opportunity to point to that change as a reason that they didn't have, that they had a conflict in their schedule. We've had conflicts every year. I actually met with the guidance department yesterday and followed up with them, and Mrs. Kevkis and I have had conversations with the guidance department as we've gone through this process as to what they're seeing, and we're getting ongoing feedback. Based on their feedback, we've moved classes. So if a class was scheduled 8th period and we realized that that was presenting an issue for students, we may have moved that to a 7th or 6th or 5th period. And that's part of the scheduling process. So soliciting feedback from the boots on the ground and making the determination. So again, I'll come back to, there's conflicts every year. One of the reasons that we have our guidance counselors work throughout a portion of the summer is to resolve conflicts. And sometimes you have students, based on the number of singletons or doubletons they've got, that it's not possible for them to get the courses they want. So based on the feedback we've got from the counselors and based on the scheduling that I've done and what I've heard from Mrs. Kevkis and Mr. Booterball, there were conflicts this year, there were conflicts last year, there was conflicts the year before, and the schedule is comparable to previous year's schedules. I think that there was a lot more work done by the administrators to get it to this point, and that's credit to them. They really put the time in to get it to where we have expectations for Radnor schedules. So yes, there were conflicts, but I would say that there's conflicts every year.
Okay. That's excellent. I just think with working with the whole new dynamic, it's very impressive that you were able to get it all up and running. So we're very appreciative about that. Any other start time? Do you have some comments? First of all, do all your cohort, do they all know that we're starting
Yes,
later? Okay.
everybody is very much aware of the start time. But I just, like, from my personal opinion, and I guess a lot of other students, I think the battle is only half over in terms of this, because, I mean, an extra hour of sleep is great. Personally, for me, I get my homework done on time, so it's just going to be an extra hour of sleep for me. But I think that for most students, a majority of my friends, and a majority of the kids at the high school, it was more of a productivity issue that saw kids like staying up doing work till 1, 2 in the morning, and then that took form in a lack of sleep issue, because as a result of the lack of productivity, they would not have enough sleep. And so I think that cutting out the amount of time at the end of the day, not by a significant amount, but cutting out the amount of productive time at the end of the day could, I don't think kids are magically going to get more productive with this change, but I think I think that an emphasis still needs to be put on implementing things that help improve productivity among students, because I think And while an extra hour of sleep is great, the battle is still not completely done. And I think a lot of my friends will appreciate the extra hour of sleep, but they'll still be up doing till 1 and 2 at night doing homework. So that's just my personal opinion.
Those are great thoughts, and I think that dovetails into further conversations that are actually ongoing, really, about homework and the place of homework in curriculum, et cetera. Don't want to go there now, but it definitely. But something that I think meshes with that particular topic.
One of the points that I would also bring up is one of the reasons that we surveyed students last year about their sleep habits and the previous years, we've got 2 years of baseline data because, moving into this change, we want to hear from students at the end of this year. Did you see yourself staying up the same amount of time? Did you see yourself staying up later? Did you realize that additional 55 minutes of sleep from the start time change? And so I will be interested. I think everybody will be waiting to see the outcomes of that when we administer the student sleep survey at the end of the school year.
The feedback will be pretty telling if it's if kids actually improved, or if it actually did help. I'm sorry, if it actually did help improve their sleep and productivity.
And there are things that we're going to continue to look at. I mean, I think that's where Dr. Babson was mentioning. We are committed to, continuing to, whether it's under the implementation of our sleep or continuing to work on the wellness study that we were undertaking. Really falls under both those umbrellas. The concept of we want to look at our homework policy. We've had a policy in place for several years, and look at that administrative guideline. We want to look at those healthy guidelines and tips for technology. And we want to continue to follow up on those pieces. We're not seeing the sleep as just a panacea that's going to solve the problems. There's still more to look at and discuss with this topic.
And can I just ask for clarification? So right now, Schoology, if you have something due, it cuts off at midnight. Is that what you said?
Well,
Yeah, that's the default for the assignment. So if the assignment says, due Wednesday, it'll always say Wednesday at 11:59.
And we're asking them to make the cutoff at 10 o'clock
it's
or
automatic.
to have an opportunity to cut it off sooner?
That
Is
we were shooting for 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but so we don't have
We can't automate that.
at this point.
I mean, a teacher could write a comment, they could mention that in class, they could write that in the assignment, they could do something like that, but you can't automate it in Schoology right now.
Oh, okay. That was just a technical question because I use a different LMS in my work, and you can,
Pick the time. Yeah.
But Schoology has it. Okay, it's interesting.
No, all you can do is pick the day. So you pick Wednesday, it's at the end of Wednesday, 11:59.
But you see what time they submit it, right? So if it's after 10 o'clock, you
You
still
could.
know that, but they can still submit it. Interesting.
Right, and we're also looking at other places in Schoology where we could put messages or taglines or something that says, healthy sleep, recommends that you finish all your homework, or you finish using technology before 9 p.m. or an hour before you go to bed, or, those kinds of things. So we still have some other avenues where we can raise awareness.
Now, when we were discussing this over the year, I thought one of the things we were going to try to do, or we were going to do, was have no clubs or extracurriculars jump into that morning time. Like, nobody's allowed to do anything at school until we start our school day. Is that, we're holding
That's
firm to
correct,
that?
except for swimming and diving was grandfathered, and they will be going 55 minutes later. So, but the other sports and clubs and activities will not be permitted to go prior to school.
Okay. So, and no clubs are jumping in there? They don't have the discretion to say, oh, well, we'll just meet at 7:30? Like, we're not allowing it?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't think we said it, but we had kind of an informal goal that there would be an end time for after-school activities as well, correct?
That's correct, 9 p.m. The goal is to have all high school students off the field by 9 p.m.
Wow. So even like the musical?
Well, that's one of the things that we've been in discussions about, is how we can go and make it work for everybody. So I have had conversations with Mr. Dietzler and Dr. Glenny and Mr. Drew about how we can navigate that. So that has been a discussion point. I think that as we get closer to the fall play and the spring musical, we'll revisit that as well.
All right. Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. That sounds, I mean, you're putting as much in place as you can. Anybody else with sleep? Okay. Are we ready to move into the update on technology?
So we're going to invite Dr. McCook to join us. So we provided you several handouts in your packet, and today you have a yellow handout that will look familiar to you because we've resurrected this from a couple previous meetings, the financial piece. So the other pieces you received on Friday in your packet, there's a cover sheet with a technology update talking about all the different devices that have been delivered to the district. And then attached to that, I gave you a two-pager, which is the plan we've been sharing with the principals and we're going to be sharing with the teachers. There are lots and lots of new toys coming into Radnor, but not everybody's getting something new. So everyone wants to know when it's going to be their turn. So this two-page document maps out for our teachers and our students when they can expect to be part of that cycle. And it's a very aggressive plan, so lots of good news over the next 2 years. So Dr. McCook's going to talk a little bit about the budgetary piece, and then I'll answer any questions about the plans for teachers.
Thank you. Just to first start off, just to give you a update on where we are, it's a very, very aggressive plan. We've never had a deployment this large in my years here at Radnor. So far, so good. Things are going really, really well. Of the 975 Surface Goes, roughly half have been deployed already. They're in students' hands already. And we've also have the 750 Chromebooks are in. They're distributed to the schools, and they're being configured as well. 200 new iPads for the second grade students are already in, and they're being configured. So it's really going well. I have to really take a moment and thank my technology team because they've done an awesome job. They continue to do that. With that, as I presented several months back, we were looking at the budgetary implications of this, and one of the issues that we've dealt with over the years was the age of our devices and the difficulty with maintaining those devices and keeping them running well and connected to our network and connected to our wireless particularly. And so part of the goal was to have a refresh cycle that would make sense, that we could get the most out of the devices that we would purchase. And what I had put together was a analysis that looked at the previous 10 years of spending for the instructional technology piece. And then I also projected forward approximately 10 years. And what you'll see here is, on average, we would spend about $200,000 less with the new plan moving forward, with refreshing devices, with not having devices over 4 years old. And in this case, we average the life estimate of an iPad to be 4 years, of a Chromebook to be 3 years, and of the Surface Go to be 4 years. And when you compare this type of deployment, which is largely a one-to-one, over the previous types of deployments that we've done historically, which were like lab-based, and we were moving students to where the devices are. Now the devices are with the students, and so that cost is actually less, And the other help was that the cost of technology has come down a little bit too over the years as well too. We're not paying the same per unit price that we paid 10 years ago for devices. So with that, we were able to build this model that, we would have a fairly level budget experience moving forward and be able to maintain a very good refresh cycle so that we would have no devices that were old. So with that, we should be in very good shape as we move forward. We're pretty excited about the Surface Go deployment and about the Chromebook deployment, and we can't wait to get started. Oh, okay, well, there's a few more updates I'd like to give you as well, too.
Okay.
Thanks.
I was going to start
I was
asking
going to just take one of those
questions,
things one at a time, but anyway, as you may know, we did launch the online site for parents to make payments. It's called My School Bucks, and actually, I don't think we even actually announced that it's really ready yet, but parents have found out, and roughly 60 parents have already paid on the site. About 80 parents bought in checks, because I guess they just wanted to get it over with right up front on the days when the students picked up those devices. But we'll be announcing it, probably like this week to let parents know that the site is up and running. It is available, and there's 3 payments that could be made on the site. For the senior class only that still have the iPads, if they want to elect to take the insurance, they can. That's a $37 payment. And just cover them for the 1 year. For the students with the Surface Goes, they can make the payment of $139, for the annual tech fee for that. One of the changes that we made was not requiring a full payment of $139 at one time. Parents can make progress payments if they like, and the system keeps track of what the amount has been paid. And, we just asked, and I put this on the site today, we just asked perhaps if they can, to make the payments by December 1st, just so that we would have time to make sure that we can make our financial obligation back to Microsoft to pay for those leases that we're going to have. Actually, it's not the leases, for the financing. And then there's a third contribution that can be made for, any families or parents or anyone who may want to make a contribution to help any family that may be experiencing any kind of hardship, and that's available as well too. And that can be made in any amount.
Can you just clarify, because it was brought to my attention that the My School Bucks page also has an option for cafeteria payments. We are not switching our cafeteria provider, so people shouldn't use that, correct?
Yes. One of the things that I guess when the site was being set up, initially the business office was listing like all of the different types of payments that they may look to collect in the future. But when a parent logs on, they should only see the 3 that are there. Originally, I think before they deployed the site correctly, you would see
This was this afternoon.
Just this afternoon.
Yeah, my husband has made the payment this afternoon, and he asked, am I going to lose my cafeteria money in the other one? Because this says I can make cafeteria payments on
We're
School
going to need
Bucks.
to look into that.
I would just double check it.
Yeah, because I created my own fictitious account so I can go on and take a look, and I only saw the 3, but it could be because of the fact that I don't actually have a student. So I will.
So you're not
I
gonna
will
eat
go
lunch.
double check. I'm not going to eat lunch. But yeah, we will double check that. But no, to my knowledge, we're not changing the cafeteria payment. That will stay the same for whatever that system was. Thank you for bringing that up. We'll make a note of that.
Just to clarify too, because I know that parents are going to see and hear different things. The Chromebooks are for 5th, 7th, and 8th graders. Are those going to be in school only, or are they going to go home with them?
Currently,
Yeah, and remember the 6th grades we bought last year?
yes. So we
They
have.
didn't get them as 5th graders. We bought them last year for the 8th graders, so
Right.
they're getting recycled, or?
We bought them for 6th grade
Brought up
last
for
year.
6th grade, yes, and that was to work with the Amplified Science curriculum that we have. So going into this year, we're going to have Chromebooks from grades 5 through 8. So all of those students will have access to a Chromebook. I can tell you that at the elementary level, they will not be going home. At least that's not the plan for now. At the middle school level, we're still in some discussions about that. To look at what that process would look like, and so the principal and I and Maureen and Dan, we'll have to have some further discussions as to how we would take that approach, because there is no technology fee that's been charged to them, and that's typically one of the reasons why a fee is charged, is because of the portability of the equipment and taking it off site and the kind of things that can happen. So we're going to have to sort of study that a little bit more.
And some of the pieces we did at the middle school was, some of our programs and our curriculum, we were already providing iPads for the kids to access in the classroom, and we found that the Chromebooks some of those programs was working better, so we actually swapped out and was making Chromebooks available to the kids in the middle school instead of the iPads that were available. They weren't taking the iPads home previously, and they're not taking currently the Chromebooks home.
ultimately, we'd like to work towards that,
Yes.
especially as students are older, the 8th graders or whatever. But the first thing we want to do is build up a habit of, number one, picking up your machine in the morning, charging it in the afternoon, getting that into the routine. We want to make sure that it's part of the instructional program. So just like that big, heavy biology book that you carry to science every day and the teacher never asks you to open it, we don't want students carrying around a Chromebook that they don't use. But given, our success with Schoology and, the middle school's going on, I think their 4th year this year with Schoology across the building, obviously we'd like students to be able to access that at home.
And that's one of the pieces I think we're going to have to discuss more as both we've had, this whole process has involved a large committee that we need to make sure we're discussing this at the board level and also at the committee level, talking to our parents, coming off of the summer, one of our biggest frustrations as a parent was, would you put down the device and read a book? I think that has to be all part of that discussion as we look at the middle school years and how we want to proceed.
I just wanted to make a comment about the yellow sheet, which is the financials of this. And first of all, thank you for updating this for us, because I think this is a really important point to be made, is that what we have is the right technology.
Yes.
And my understanding was that we have actually a lot less technology overall in the schools. It's going to cost a lot less. What on earth did we do in 2010, 2011? I was on the board then. That huge $1.2 million expenditure.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back, but that, yeah, they were, I believe that was just prior to the iPads, and I believe that we were looking at outfitting a bunch of the labs at the high school and at the middle school. It was pretty
So
significant.
there was a lot of
Yeah.
technology.
And the cost of the machines were a lot more too. Honestly, I think that's part of the other factor that's there. But
Yeah. Oh,
there were
that's
some years that
interesting.
that we did acquire a lot of technology. So yeah, I think that's, if I recall correctly, it's been a few years, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it was.
So do you think that it is very realistic that we'll be able to stay at this much lower technology budget and have a smooth, streamline of projected expenditures for this?
I think so. Obviously, one of the biggest factors is going to be, what the future costs of the device, of those devices are, and if we do decide at some point in the future to make a change in the device. But, with the parent contributions, because that's factored into this is net of the parent contributions, I think, it gets us in a sweet spot of being able to afford a device that would be somewhere like in the $850 to $900 range, which, I think for the last few years has been able to buy a pretty decent device. So I think, as we look and forecast this towards the future, I don't think we're going to hit any issues that I think that's going to, change this cost structure much at all.
All right. Well, that's great to hear.
And I just want to thank Dr. McCook and Dr. McQuiggan, and everyone who's worked on this. I mean, this is something that we, in all areas of the district, we want to make sure we're taking a long-term approach and long-term planning to understand, the long-term impacts. And, we've had discussions about, well, did we really reduce the budget, or we just reduce whether or not, how, we just decided not to spend as much. In reality, we reduced the budget, and that has an implication, obviously, future years, that those were dollars that we would have had to continue to spend. So I really commend them for taking a long-term approach and looking at K to 12. There's still a lot of work to be done. This is a long-term implementation plan, and there's still a lot of pieces that have to be completed, and we need to continue to look at K to 12.
Yeah, and I would like to request that we get an update, sort of December, January, on where you are collecting the fees from everybody, if there were any snags with that.
Okay.
To come back probably mid-year to talk about our technology goals. So we had those goals we established last year, and to give an update on some of those things.
Yeah.
Our post-survey for teachers, we just scheduled for December. We'll probably do it right before teachers leave for the holidays. So we'll have some benchmarks to share then, too.
Great.
Oh, sorry. I just say, whenever we talk about this topic too, because I think we've been doing this for 2 years now, and we're going to continue. And I think sometimes as we discuss it, we also lose some of the background through it. I mean, one of the things we discovered when we were, giving our students, the iPads, the devices, some of our parents shared with us, this is great, the school provides this, but we're still going out and buying some type of full-service laptop or station. And by providing now what is a full-service, workstation for the students, yes, there's a greater contribution for the parents, but we believe the parents now will not have to go out and be purchasing an additional device on top of that. And then working with the school district, with these costs, we think it's actually it's really a win-win for both the district and the parents as we move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So do we have any idea how many students or, parents and students are going to use their own device anyway?
I was
That's a
just
great
gonna mention,
question,
yeah.
because I spent the better part of the weekend, actually, it was really neat, because a number of students sent me emails directly, about questions about the devices that they already own, and. Yeah, well, they sort of told me that you called them and told them to email me. But anyway, but it was it was really neat, because first of all, I was really impressed about how they presented the questions and the devices that they have, and would they be able to use them, and what, if any, limitations might they have. I mean, they really hit it. I mean, and so I was really happy to respond back to them right away, because they're so encouraged and ready to go and get started to the school year. But right now, I think there's about 10 to 12 that sort of indicated that, yep, we're going to I'm going to use my device so
Wait,
far.
percent or
No,
actual number?
Actual numbers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That have indicated that they're going to use their devices. And it was interesting, because I think one had an actual Surface device already, and then some others had Mac Airs and MacBooks, and so we discussed what the potential limitations could be, but what I did encourage them is that it really is going to depend on the curriculum and the kind of things that they're going to be asked to do. I can't really tell them what that might be, but I also share with them that you should probably try it first, and because if it works for you, then great, but if it doesn't work, you still have the option later if you want to come in and participate in the program. But I think that the limitations, for the most part, are largely are going to be the ability to annotate on the screen with a pen if you don't have a touch screen. And also, if it's a Mac, perhaps that, one of the other potential limitations could be the differences in the Microsoft suite of products. The Mac version is a little different than the PC version, so there may be some format type issues. But other than that, if they utilize Office 365, which we're going to be providing to all students, then that experience should be the same across the board. So, that's the one thing that should stay even.
Are high school teachers instructed to fully resort to the the Microsoft way of submitting assignments through OneDrive? Is that the only way that assignments will be submitted now? Through OneDrive?
No, I think that for the most part, I think they're going to be looking still at Schoology. Yeah, for submitting the assignments, unless you've heard anything
There are
different.
some interfaces that are available, like I know Mrs. Dean last year was piloting some of the things you can do through the Microsoft Class Notebook.
Yes.
Where you can submit things through the Class Notebook and they automatically, upload to Schoology and things like that. So there's going to be some crossover, but we are encouraging people to get away from things like the Google Drive and whatnot, so that we have more one-stop shopping. And when the teacher or some teachers ask you to join Teams or a notebook or something like that, it's a lot easier for you to grab your documents and your work if you're already in OneDrive. It saves you a few steps.
Yep.
All right, so OneDrive is
It's part of Office
Office
365.
Office 360's Google equivalent.
OneDrive is where the students and teachers are storing their materials.
Okay.
So that's where they store all their documents, in OneDrive. And then there's different products in there, like Teams, where you and I can work together on a collection of documents, links, things like that. But there's lots of things in
Lots
there
of
to
things,
try.
yeah.
that program works better on the Surface Goes, like the native platform. It does. Because on the iPads, that thing did not work.
That's true, yeah.
The app was limited, yeah, yeah.
OneDrive and OneNote were probably a little challenging on the iPad, yes.
So are our teachers able to keep up with these students on these?
They are trying. We've been really fortunate, because they've had the opportunity all last school year to participate in staff development. Some of it even down to one-to-one level, some in small groups and professional learning communities. And I got to tell you, I'm so impressed. And I said this to Mr. Bechtold earlier today that we've asked quite a bit of our teachers, particularly at the high school, going through these iterations and the testing and the research that they've done, and we've all been really better for it, and so the work that they've done has just been incredible, and I think they are up for the challenge, and I believe that they are ready.
I really have to thank everybody who worked on that. I know people were involved in the committee, and we've looked at this, and I know lots of people, vetted input, and people contributed their thoughts. So I hope, it sounds like everything's ready to roll.
Yeah.
Did you want to present something further on the technology piece?
No.
Okay.
I think that's everything. As far as professional development, I know Mrs. Kevkis we have Virginia Glatzer back again at the high school doing professional development with our teachers, and they set up groups over the summer. The teachers had the opportunity to get their machines early, so they were able to have them in hand and have some PD before they left for the summer so they could play around with them. And then there were multiple sessions offered both virtually and face-to-face over the summer, and then she'll be there to support them multiple days each week, which will be really helpful.
Can I ask just a follow-up kind of
Yeah.
on the backside? So I know part of this, the goal was to get rid of a lot of obsolete technology, and it seemed to me from the list here that we've accomplished most, if not all, of your goals on that standpoint. The question I had for you is all the things that we are getting rid of, just being mindful of our place in the community and not adding a lot of electronic detritus to waste streams. Are we being mindful of the fact that some people don't need the latest iPad to run whatever videos they run at home or play whatever games? And are we making those available either to the community or, rather than just filling landfills with
It's a very good.
anything that's potentially still useful?
Sure, that's an excellent question. What we've done in the past, actually, for some of our devices did have a resale value.
Okay.
And so we received quotes from several competitors about buying used equipment, and we, actually going back the last 3 years, we began to sell the iPads. Moving forward, we do have a pretty large amount that will be available for sale after we make some decisions about how we can repurpose some of the equipment to use, in some of our other grade levels as well. There are a number of very old PC type laptops that where they pretty much don't have
Nobody
much
wants.
use at all, and but we are going to make at least put the inventory out there, make it available, and see if there's any takers. I've been contacted by even some other organizations about wanting to purchase them, but I haven't been able to release anything yet because I want to make sure that we've covered our own bases internally first. And then anything that is just only has salvage value, we have a recycling company that will come and pick it up, and they certify that the machines have been wiped and recycled correctly, so that they
Okay.
don't just end up in some landfill someplace.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, excellent question. I wondered that too. Thank you so much. This is really fantastic
Yeah.
to see it come to fruition. I think we're through our agenda early. That brings us to any new business? Any new business? And is there any public comment at this time?
Hi, Michelle Leonard. I just really wanted to say thank you for all the work that I know you all did over the summer to make sure that the later start time goes as smoothly as it can. So thank you, and thank you also for all the work. I think the Surface Go's are going to be a great option for the high schoolers over the iPads for all the writing and typing that they do. And I just kind of wanted to echo what Jesse said, that I hope we'll continue to look at the technology use and our homework review and policy to make sure we get the most kind of bang for our money. And then lastly, one thing that just occurred to me as we were talking is, I know there are some things that meet before school at the middle school. Not a lot, but I know there are a couple of things, like jazz band a couple of times. So I'm just wondering, and I have to say selfishly, I've had a child do that, and it just occurred to me. So I'm just wondering if that's something we've thought about, especially considering now that the middle school did move a little, I mean, it's not much, but still, just something maybe to think about. I don't know if it's too late for this year, but.
Is that high school or middle school?
Middle school.
Middle school. Mm.
So, if we're making that policy at the high schools, it's something we want to think about for our middle schoolers as well. But again, just mainly thank you all.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, our next meeting will be September 17th at 5 p.m. And until that time, we are adjourned.